Hey, it's Gothy, and I am doing my IUD experience vlog. I got it done yesterday, and one of the reasons I want to do this is because when I decided that I was getting the IUD done, um, I spent quite a few hours on YouTube just watching videos and like people's vlogs and stuff and their experiences with it. And I mean, I did try and stay away from a lot of the horror story sort of ones, like my IUD almost killed me, and like stuff like that, because I don't need to hear that. um, so yeah, I thought I would do my experience and stuff, just so that there's another opinion, experience out there. And also because things happen a little bit differently in Australia with the IUD insertion. Um, then I noticed that happens in the States. So yeah. IUD. I got the Mirena, which lasts for 5 years. In certain circumstances, it can be pushed to 7, but that doesn't happen very often. 5 years is the way to go. So the Mirena is the hormonal IUD. You can also get a copper one, and it is inserted into the uterus. And the way that it works is that it's like a little wishbone shaped thing, but like a longer tail on it. And it sits in the uterus, and it like sits right on the walls, and it releases hormones into your body. And it makes the uterus, it's almost like create like a mucusy sort of thing, so that it ends up like blocking the entrance, with like this mucus barrier that sperm can't get through, and that's why you can't get pregnant on them. Yeah, and because it is a hormonal IUD, people experience either less periods or no periods at all, or they might just get like a little bit of spotting, which is one of the reasons it's the most commonly used IUD, is because it helps with a lot of different things. So like if you have ridiculously heavy periods and that's what you want to go in for, then that's probably what they'll give you. Yeah, I haven't actually read through. They gave me a little booklet with it, and it's just got. It talks about, first of all, what it does, what's in it, how it works, metabolism, trials, stuff like that. It does talk about some of the things that can happen with an IUD, like some of the negative things. So, of course, I mean, it's a medical procedure. It's not one that you have to be asleep for. You can be awake for it. And it is usually your choice, although your doctor might recommend something. But, you know, there is the chance of infections. It's a very low risk. And like, so there's a chance of infection, there's the chance of damage to the uterus, and both of those things are quite low. Infection is like 1 in 500, and the damage to the uterus is 1 in 1,000. The most common thing that can happen is expulsion. If you have never had kids, have never been pregnant, the risk of expulsion is 5%, which is fairly high. And it's just because, you know, your body might reject it or your uterus might reject it. The shitty thing is that the symptoms of an expulsion are things like really bad cramps and like bleeding and stuff, which could happen anyway if you are around the time of your period. And the most common time that an IUD could be expelled is your period. So you have to be really careful, and if you think for a second that something is wrong, you go to the doctor and you just say, I think there's something wrong with my ID, check it out. That's why they also say one of the things you've got to do is check the strings. You gotta reach up inside and check the strings, make sure you can feel them, you know, and like sort of get used to the length that they are and where the strings sit, and if there's any changes, then you might want to go see your doctor. I'm not able to do that yet because I did only just get it done. It hasn't. It's been like 22, yeah, about 22 hours since I've had mine done. So it's, yeah. Where do I go from here? Right. So, getting the actual procedure done and everything. So, I can't take any painkillers. I have a lot of medicinal allergies and intolerances and stuff, and I just can't risk an anaphylactic reaction from something that I haven't tried or tested yet. So, I can't take any painkillers. I also declined using a local anesthetic or a general anesthetic, again, because I've never had one. I don't know how I'd react, and I would hate to have to be rushed to hospital or anything because I've had an anaphylactic reaction, and it's just not something that I wanted to do. So I could feel everything. It wasn't super painful. It was bad, but it wasn't like, oh my god, I have to stop, I can't take any more pain bad. It was uncomfortable, it was bad, it was painful. But it was bearable. Yeah, so you go, the first thing that happens is that you get a pregnancy test done, because you cannot be pregnant for this. I had been abstaining from sex for about 7 weeks, so there was no chance that I was pregnant. I was actually on my period when I got it done, which they hadn't been planning on it as such, but they had been hoping that I would either get my period before, during, or just slightly after. And that is something that they do aim to do for people who haven't had kids or haven't been pregnant. It does make it not necessarily a little bit easier it doesn't, because the cervix will dilate a little bit, but not a lot. It's more because, you know, getting an IUD done means you're going to have cramps, you're going to have bleeding, there's just going to be all this stuff. If you're already on your period or you're about to start it, it does sort of help your body get used to it if you're already experiencing those things. Yeah, so I was already on my period. I was on the last day. And I truthfully haven't bled that much more. I thought that I would, and I'm still got a little bit of spotting happening right now, but otherwise I'm fine. And like I said, it's been about 22 hours since I've got mine done. I got cramps, and they're gone. Yeah, so it hasn't been too bad so far. Fingers crossed. But you go in, they do the pregnancy test. I knew I wasn't pregnant, but I did it anyway, just to be safe. Once the results of that come back, which, you know, it's just like your basic pee on a stick sort of thing, then they start the actual process. So they get everything set up, everything is clean, everything's sterilized, and, you know, they put gloves on. My doctor had an assistant with her, and my housemate came with me as well, because I do have a history of sexual abuse and rape, so I needed to be careful, especially because I also have anxiety issues and another mental illness, so I was expecting it to get a little bit more interesting, and I mean, I did have some trouble with some, like, flashbacks and stuff like that, to one of my assaults in particular, and it was a bit rough, and it sort of, it did make me cry a bit more than I probably would have otherwise, but it was also painful, so, yeah. So, underwear off, I was wearing a dress, so, yeah, dress up, lay down, legs in stirrups, and then, they have to use a metal speculum for it. So, the assistant warmed it up as much as she could. It wasn't actually too bad. She did warn me, like, it's probably going to be a bit cold because we can only warm it up so much. But it wasn't too bad. So, the speculum goes in. The first thing she did, though, actually, was to use her fingers to sort of measure whether she needed the medium speculum or the long speculum. We only needed the medium one, and even that one was a bit too big. So that goes in, gets propped open, and then the next thing they have to do is they have to measure your uterus, because they need to know whereabouts in the uterus, like how much space there is in there, how long they got to cut the strings, all that sort of stuff. So first they sort of measure how long to the entrance of it, and that hurt a little bit, not too much. I was, oh, okay, alright. But then they actually have to push it in and measure the inside. Now that hurts. Some people won't experience pain for this, and I guess it would also depend on if you've had painkillers or anesthetic or anything like that, but me, with nothing, it hurt. I could definitely feel it, but they have to measure it. So then that comes out. She waited a few seconds, and then she put the IUD in. It also hurt. It hurt like a motherfucker. And then they release it, so the little arms come out, and then she cut the strings, took the speculum out, and it was done. It did hurt. I was crying. I was dealing with the flashbacks as well, like I said, but I was crying, I swore quite a few times, and it was not pleasant. So I think in between now and getting it removed, I might be looking into whether I can have anesthetics and stuff, because I imagine that getting it taken out probably hurts more. And then depending on what my options are at that time will depend on whether I can go for more permanent contraception or whether I've got to get another IUD. Yes. So I can't remember the name of the gland now. There is a gland in the, I think it's near the cervix, and for some people, actually for most people, during the IUD insertion, it releases a, I want to say that it's a hormone, but it releases too much of it, and it affects the body. And that is what usually makes people dizzy, it makes people nauseous, it makes people faint sometimes, it makes people vomit, and it gives them diarrhea. So that is all perfectly normal to experience, you know, within 2 or 3 minutes of having your IUD done. Those are normal things, because this gland just sort of goes into overdrive and like, oh shit, there's like something inside, like there's something poking around the cervix, boom, have some extra. So those are things that you might experience. You know, I ended up puking quite a bit. I puked up everything that I ate beforehand, but it is part of the reason that they say have something to eat before you get your IUD done, because it's better that you like throw it up and like, you know, get a little bit nauseous or dizzy rather than pass the fuck out. So yeah, but those are normal things. And you might not, like I don't know whether people who've been knocked out or people who are under local anesthetic will get the same symptoms, I guess. And apart from that, the cramps sort of started almost right away. But again, because I was on the last day of my period, I was already a little bit crampy, not too bad. So it wasn't horrible. I did come home and just like, I put some Archer on and I just curled up in bed and just, you know, vegged out. My housemate cooked dinner. He took care of everything so that I didn't have to worry about it. And I mean, truthfully, I was having a bit more issue with some of the feelings and stuff that got brought back up about my salt and stuff. So that was probably the harder part for me. I had a little bit of trouble getting to sleep, but again, that could just be because I have other issues that impact on that. But yeah, overall it went well. It's been 22 hours. I'm spotting like a tiny bit. I have no more cramps. I feel fine. I was a little bit concerned like the first couple times I went to the toilet, because I'm thinking, oh god, like I'm gonna pee and it's gonna come out. Even though, like, I know they're two separate things completely and all that sort of stuff. I know that, but it doesn't stop me from freaking out about it. But everything's been fine. So now it's just a waiting game to see how it goes. An IUD can take anywhere up to 6 months to sort of settle in and for your body to work out where it's going to fall in the whole period spectrum, whether it's just going to be a light period or whether it's going to be spotting or whether it's going to be nothing. So it's a really good idea if you've got like a diary or something to just like make note of the days that you spot and stuff like that. My doctor gave me this to track the first 4 months. So on the top it says there's a dot for spotting and there's a dot for bleeding. She said to expect like some people won't bleed. Some people will spot a little bit, like every other day. Some people will spot every day. Like it's very different. So we'll see how it goes. So I mean, it was painful, but it's probably the easiest. It's probably been the easiest medical thing that I've ever done to date. So that's been good, and hopefully everything goes fine. And like, you can't insert anything into the vagina for like, they say 48 hours. I'm probably going to give it a couple of extra days just to be safe because it was feeling kind of angry yesterday. Not surprising, but so you can't use tampons. If you use a Diva cup or a Moon cup, you can't use that. And you can't, it's not recommended to check your strings straight away. Like, give it a couple days and then start sort of practicing to do that. But it is something you've got to do, and that's going to be my next hurdle, is because I'm not used to doing stuff like that, so that will be the next thing. But also, they give you a card to say, hey, this is when you've got to get it out, so I've got until 2021, provided there are no other complications. You also get a piece of paper with like a bunch of stuff about after your IUD is done. So it says nothing to be inserted in the vagina for 48 hours. No intercourse, no tampons, no cups. Don't have don't have a bath. Don't go swimming, and don't go into a spa bath. Just for 48 hours. Saying you may experience mild cramps and some bleeding for anywhere up to a week. You might have an increased vaginal mucus discharge in the first few weeks. Irregular bleeding is very common following insertion of the marina. May take 4 to 6 months to settle. To check your string, if you cannot find a string, use another form of contraception and make an appointment for a checkup. And if you have any of the following symptoms, contact the clinic and speak to a nurse or doctor, as you may need to come in for a checkup. And it's unusual menstrual bleeding or heavy bleeding between periods, pelvic pain or pain with sex, offensive or discolored discharge, fever, aching, or feeling generally unwell without obvious cause, unable to feel strings if you suspect you may be pregnant, or if you have missed a period with the copper IUD. That's about it. So, yeah. Hopefully, everything goes well. I'm really hoping it will. I have a checkup booked for the 5th of January. They do book you a checkup appointment for somewhere between 3 and 6 weeks, just to make sure that everything's going fine. That's when they'll ask to see this as well, to say, hey, you know, what days did you spot, where did you bleed, that kind of thing. Yeah, and then they'll probably like check the strings, make sure it's all sitting fine, and if you're having any issues and stuff like that that are maybe not urgent, that'll be the time to talk about them. And that's it. Like, it was, I mean, it sucked, it was painful, but it wasn't too bad overall. It was pretty easy. And it didn't take long either, because my appointment started at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and we left at 10 past 4. I also had to get a blood test done as well, so that took some time, because it can take some time to get blood from me. And, yeah, like, that's pretty much it. So, I mean, if you have questions and stuff and you want to talk to someone about it, you can message me and I can try and give you answers. The internet is great for looking up stuff, and just, there's a wealth of information, and it's great that we have something like this where vagina owners can come along and just like get everything they need and not have to really worry. And yeah, it's good. It's something that I do kind of wish people with penises had this many options for contraception as well. Like, you know, for men, it's just sort of like, oh, you know, you can use condoms or you can get the snip, and that's about it. They need to have some stuff like this because, I mean, it's kind of sucky that it sort of always falls on the person with the vagina to sort of take care of the contraception in this sort of way. Like, you know, because, I mean, you can get the IUD done. It's still a good idea to use condoms because, I mean, condoms still protect against other STDs and stuff like that. But, yeah, it sort of feels like it always comes down on the female or the vagina owner to sort of take care of this sort of stuff, and it's not really good. Yeah. So I do kind of wish that there were more things out there for men or penis owners. And yeah. But that was my experience. It was all quite easy. Didn't take long. And so far hasn't been too bad. We'll see how it goes. I've got a month until my next period's supposed to be due, so we'll see how things go in between now and then. And yeah, like, if you have questions, and like, you know, you can leave them in the comments, or you can send me a message, or, you know, I've got links to everything social media down below, so you can message me on one of those. I do have a Tumblr as well, which I'm pretty sure is linked down below, so if you want to ask something and you want it to be anonymous, I do have that turned on. And yeah. Yeah, IUD is a good thing. It kind of sucked, but I now don't have to worry about it as long as nothing goes wrong for the next 5 years, which is a huge relief. And one of the things I will also mention, just quickly, is because I do have paranoid schizophrenia. So I had a pregnancy scare a couple of years ago, and it didn't really go well. I sort of had this mentality of there's something inside of me that does not belong and it needs to come out. I'm not having those feelings with the IUD, and I was kind of worried that that was a thing that was going to happen. But, you know, like, apart from a few times where I sort of think, oh shit, like, there is something inside me, it's not, oh my god, it needs to come out, it needs to come out. So, I mean, that's a positive, at least. I'm not freaking the fuck out because there's a thing inside my uterus, so, yeah. I put that down to me getting better with my mental illness. Or maybe just that a little bit of plastic with some hormones in it is much better than a fucking baby. I'm pretty sure that's probably the thing. But baby gravy has been rendered useless. That is it. No more babies. Any babies. I don't want babies. I'm gonna go. So, I'll talk to you later. Bye.